have our first key race alert of the night. All right, these are the first results. Actual votes coming in very, very early in the state of Kentucky. You can see 1% of the vote is in. Donald Trump has almost 80% of the vote. Hillary Clinton has 18% of the vote. He's ahead now by more than 2,600 votes. Once again, very, very early in Kentucky right now. Our first key race alert of the night. Let's go over to John King at the Magic Wall. John, a bunch of states are closing at the top of the hour, including some key battlegrounds that we've been paying a lot of attention right now. But let's take a look at Kentucky first.
You look at Kentucky, and again, we have 1% of the vote in, so we're going to spend some time counting tonight, and that's good. We have a competitive race. We're going to count the votes. If you're Donald Trump, you love that as you watch the early results. Let's just be clear. They don't tell us much, except I think we can all agree Donald Trump is most likely to win the state of Kentucky and to win it quite handily. So what will we learn? We will learn a lot. Well, if you get coal country down in here, and Donald Trump has made an appeal saying Hillary Clinton has abandoned coal miners, has abandoned old steel towns, has abandoned white working-class voters who live in small-town America. So Kentucky will teach us something tonight. The margins in places like this, if Donald Trump is running up, again, these are the first votes, so just don't go to Vegas or make any bets on this, but if Donald Trump is running up margins like this in these small towns, not a lot of people live here. You see the early votes, just 313 to 68, but if he's running up big margins like that, as we get the early results in a state like Kentucky, that does tell us something, because there are communities like that here in southern Ohio. There are communities like that here in southwestern Virginia. There are communities like that in Pennsylvania, which we expect will be one of the defining tests tonight right here in Pennsylvania. Now, that's an 8 o'clock. So when we get results, the 6:30 polls have closed. The 7 o'clock results will start to come in. What you look for, as you're doing a little CSI, if you will, is you look at the towns in a state like this, and so what's going to happen here? Indiana, we expect, will stay red, but we want to look at it there. So the early results come from states that we think, Indiana and Kentucky, we think are going to be reliably red, but we can still learn from them looking at those results. Just want to also tell our viewers, these New Hampshire votes, when you see, as we go through the night, if you're staying with us throughout the night, states will turn a color. That's who's leading. Until we call them, it's just who's leading in the vote. And so sometimes the map can look a little deceptive. These are, again, if you go into New Hampshire, Dixville, Notch, some other small towns voted last night. That's all we have in New Hampshire right now. The polls are still open. 55
people or so have voted so far. So that's obviously...
let's take a look at the stress on them today. They got it over with
the electoral map right now, 270. That's the number you need to be elected president. Going into this night, where do we stand?
This is where we stood coming into the night. 268 to 204, so clearly an advantage for Secretary Clinton. If you look, the dark blue states, those are states we at CNN view as solid Democratic. It's almost certain to vote Democratic. The lighter blue states, those are leaning Democratic. We have to keep an eye on those when we start to get results, when we look deeper into the exit polls. The dark red states, reliably Republican. The shaded red states, leaning Republican. Again, in places like especially Ohio and Iowa, we're going to watch them all night long. The Clinton campaign thinks there could be a chance they're in play. But here's where we start tonight. So if we're going to have an early night, if you will, meaning Clinton starts with an advantage, what would an early night look like? An early night would look like she starts to run it up, and we call that one. Now, I expect Florida to be competitive. That was the closest state in 2012 between Obama and Romney. That close. Florida is always a battleground. We can go back to 2000 or whatever. But if Clinton were somehow to lock up Florida early on, we're projecting to the west. But if you're winning this state big, well, guess what? That would tell us something. But
what would Trump have to do to offset Florida?
Right. So if she lost Florida, if she lost Florida, that's 29.
If she wins Florida, what would Trump have to do to still win the presidency?
It's incredibly hard. Can he do it? Can he do it? Here's what Donald Trump would have to do to win. He would have to win North Carolina, which if you're losing Florida, but he would have to win North Carolina. He would have to win Pennsylvania. He would have to win Michigan. That gets him in the 255 range. This is why Donald Trump needs Florida. Then you're looking at 255.
Let's say he gets Arizona and
How does he get there from there? So then you come out here and he gets Arizona. If he gets Arizona and Nevada, that would put him over the top. But if you talk to even most Republicans in Nevada, believe with early voting, that one's going to be blue. We have it as a toss-up right now. So if he didn't get Nevada, but he got Arizona, can he
click on New Hampshire?
Can he get there still? Then
New Hampshire.
Then he can get there with New Hampshire.
270.
So he can get there. The question is, if you're losing this, it's hard to believe you're going to win up here unless he has an overwhelming surge among those white working class voters. Is it impossible? No. If you look at the data heading into the election, unlikely. But that's why we're going to count them, Wolf.
We're going to count all those votes. We're getting closer and closer to our first chance to make projections in this presidential race. Coming up, the first wave of poll closings, including the battlegrounds of Georgia and Virginia. Much more ahead on this election night in America.